All that sound you hear is the flat six of Porsche GT3s, the 991 and 992s. It's time for them to qualify. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy Scott alongside Joe Peak. Joe, we've seen a couple of truncated sessions in practice yesterday, but now it's go time. They have probably at most 25 minutes. All depends on what happens because this track has really caught out a couple of drivers.
Yeah, and unfortunately with that lost track time, that means that some drivers have not had as much as they would have liked. So it's going to be difficult as they want to try and memorize this track to the best of their ability, as we see on our feed the shots of them practicing here today. And a big part of that is just how this is so technical around here. But Barber has really built up its reputation in a short amount of time. Here you see that track map as the Alabama roller coaster kicking things off just after that swift first turn. Charlotte's Web probably going to be the best place to try and make those overtakes. Watch out for Museum Corner as well. And that is a place where you could see a bit of issues out there. That we had a huge backup on course. We'll get to that in a second because you just pointed that out to me there, Jeremy. I'm not sure what was going on. That was in Charlotte's Web, and I'm not sure why all the drivers came to almost a halt.
This is not going to be good because we've got a couple of drivers, one of them being Efren Castro, holding up traffic through the museum corner, trying to weave their tires. The Efren Castro running the Children's of Alabama paint scheme this weekend. He's a guest driver from Carrera Cup, but and you mentioned turn 13 and turn 17, the two main parts. Let's see if we can get to a video feed because this is a little bit of a mess out there. Very unusual to see drivers holding up other drivers during qualifying. We see, look at this. They're just trying to weave their way through the backstretch. This is odd.
We can't stress that this is very unusual for this series. Now, you might, if you watch things like Formula One, you might be used to seeing these sort of stack-ups as drivers try to position themselves. But in this series, generally, they all kind of go and put themselves out in a place that's good for one another, not backing everybody up. This is utterly bizarre. I've never seen something like this in this series before.
Yeah, John Maskey, the race director, watching them go through the paces. Now everybody hits the go fast pedal, but this is just strange.
Well, hopefully they'll be able to get it sorted out soon. This is a large field, mind you, but everybody's trying to pick the same piece of track at once. When they've got 2.5 miles to try and spread themselves out. So,
and then you've got the 297 of Eric Lapp warming up his tires going into turn number 1. Very, very odd behavior out of the GT3 drivers. You don't normally see that here in this series. So it's kind of a head scratcher for some of us. Those of you who are here at the track, yeah, this is not normal. So, but Therese Laloux trying to get her best to get gap on the track. And it's something that I know at least the Cayman drivers meeting, they said find your own gap in pit road or find your own gap safely on the track.
Yeah.
Not like what we're seeing here. This is just a very bizarre situation, but we're supporting the NTT IndyCar series, so bizarre situations in and of themselves, they're just going to happen.
Right now, as we're getting some more pictures here on the backside of the course, it does look like they're starting to spread out a little bit more. They can't dilly-dally in this session. I mean, 25 minutes to try and set a good lap out here. You don't have too much time to put one on the board. We're getting a few now across the start-finish line as we speak.
Oh, Jared Thomas already breaking last year's time set by Riley Dickinson. Dickinson with a 24.888. Thomas, 24.751. Freiberg, second quick with a 29.727. Charlie Peter, look at him in the 991 class with a 29.9. Let's go through a quick rundown of what class is what. The Pro-Am class for the 992s are black in the black numbers on the plates, black wing end plates. The 991 class is red number plates, red wing plates. And the 992 Masters is blue number plates and blue wing plates. And if you look on the scoring pylon, you can tell the 992s and the 991s. 992s have a 2 on the left, and the furthest left number for the 991s have a 1.
So there you go, the three classes competing here today. And along that first lap, Thomas, the quickest of that Pro-Am category, with Freiberg sitting in second. And Charlie Peter, who has been very fast in that 991, finds himself third overall after that first lap. Some of that may be down to some of the cluster of cars that we saw out there, but regardless, we've had this now twice where there's at least one 991 that kind of outperforms a lot of the 992s.
Well, and of course, you and I mentioned also, as times start to come on board, drivers are starting to get faster times. Scott Blend, second quick, 25.7. So great to see him early on up near the front. But, you and I actually talked to Charlie Peter and his driver coach, which is a name that's going to be familiar to some of the IndyCar paddock, Merle Swan is his driver coach. So that's one guy you want in your back pocket, especially when your dad's no slouch either. Hans Peter, a very well-known club racer in the club racing ranks. But we are seeing Paul Bocuse also 26.0. Nobody has yet to touch the time of Jared Thomas, 23.992. Talk about setting the bar early.
Yeah, he's 1.7 seconds quicker than Scott Blend right now. We're seeing a few cars coming off that final turn, definitely kicking up a bit of dust exiting out of there. It's a downhill plunge through that corner, so you don't want to let it carry too much speed, or else you'll head off into that grass. And we've seen in a variety of series over the years, if you get loose, it's easy for that car to shoot back across the track and into the pit wall.
It's going to be interesting to have a debrief with, because usually after the sessions, you and I like to sit down with the driver, Stuart Elliott, Forbes Robinson. I'd love to get his opinion on that start.
Oh,
boy, that's not going to be
I don't
fun.
think it'll be right for broadcast.
It will definitely not be right. Jared Thomas into the pits, and Ashley Freiberg sets her fastest time of the session so far, 24.752. If you were here yesterday, you kind of witnessed us wax poetic on how Ashley has a new paint scheme this weekend, and yes, it was confirmed that throughout the rest of the season she will have the Mobil 1 50th anniversary paint scheme on her car, but that's good news for her, but she's also still looking for some sponsorship throughout the season as well.
Right now ahead of Paul Bocuse, who still sits in third. Paul sitting a personal best in Sector 1, so it looks like he's going to try and jump up ahead of Ashley onto that front row, as Blend still has the fastest lap of the Masters. Rob Walker trying to chase him down, although separated by Efren Castro currently.
I got to talk to Paul Bocuse leaving the hotel this morning, and for somebody at 6:30, he's more peppier than I am. Of course, I'm used to getting up that early. Is Jared Thomas and crew talking over what they need to do for this session. I wouldn't be surprised if he just says, you know what, let's just save the equipment for the race later on today. That's probably the best course of action. Well,
he's still got 0.7 of a second. I guess it'll depend on if he starts to see people improving from here. Bocuse now down to a 24.7, but stays in third after that last lap, getting ever closer, 0.005 of a second away from the front row.
Yeah, and of course, as you're watching our stream, there's Jared Thomas, a points leader. He's got a 19-point advantage over Paul Bocuse, 2 wins on the season. Both of those came at Sebring in pretty much darn near dominating fashion.
Yeah, Thomas was looking very good out at the front down in Florida for sure, but he's going to try and carry that on here today. As on the screens we see Efren heading down into Museum Corner. We're kind of keeping an eye on him because, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, he carries the Alabama Children's Hospital on his car and is racing for an excellent cause, but also because he is coming down from the Carrera Cup and competing here in Porsche Sprint Challenge. So he's seeing how he fares against some of the new talent that are trying to progress up to where he's racing.
Got to give a shout out to Shane Leathers in the 275. He is 5th fastest in Pro-Am with a 26.7. Got a new driver coach this weekend. cult classic, cult legend, Tommy Byrne is with us in the paddock this weekend. Always great to see a good, dear friend of mine. His normal driving coach, Tony Kester, is off playing with other race cars this weekend, and we'll see him at COTA once again. But nonetheless, Peter Atwater. Oh, look at that lap from the 261, 26.3. Charlie Peter running a faster lap, but he's getting passed by drivers in the 992s. John Gilliland, he's come by with a fast lap, 26.3.
Now, I think Peter and Meissner are going to be quite the pair
Yes.
racing in those 991s. They're much faster than the rest of the field currently, and they're separated by, I think it's about 2/10 right now. So it's not insanely close, but it's close enough that if they aren't interrupted by all the other 992s around them too much, they could have just a great battle for the lead.
Well, something you and I talked about earlier in the week was how this battle between Meissner and Peter was going to take place, and we're starting to see it take shape in practice in qualifying. These two are going to be the class of the 991 field, and I think that the fall line guys are realizing this, and they've got to step up because you've got Shermer and Herb. They're couple seconds off, but I think that throughout the race that's going to help them with racecraft.
Absolutely, and as we watch them head through Museum Corner here, trying to take as much of that inside curb as they can and swing out onto the back stretch. Just look at them try and keep those cars on the road, essentially, just glancing the curb through the first part of the S's on the back straightaway. There is paved runoff out there, but you can wind up hitting a few bumps on your way along, and that can throw you completely out of control.
Something I want to mention with that previous shot, too, you and I actually got to talk to not only Ashley Freiberg, but her driver coach, Jan Magnuson, as they were going through the track walk. And we got a little discussion on how to approach that curb. You want to approach it early. Watch as the drivers are coming through there, coming out of the museum, how they're touching that curb early. You don't want to get too high, as Ashley said, through that stretch.
Exactly. It has kind of a gentle entry, and then it gets much higher later on. So if you hit it too late, then it'll throw you off. And then that second curb is definitely much taller. You've seen them just kind of get a little bit of it up through there. In fact, some of them not even touching it at all, just going right alongside it. I guess it depends on your confidence and how much you think you can take, because the last thing you want is to pitch the car out wide there.
Well, it's interesting, too, is the only driver I've seen on those outer rumble strips drivers left this past time by was Paul Bocuse. Everybody else kind of avoiding him or just glancing on him. Of course, Chiacchetti comes by and proves me wrong as he drives through. Chiacchetti had a little bit of a rough day yesterday. Came off a turn 4, took out some signage, and took the crew the MDK crew, a little bit of a while to get that back up to speed, but he was able to make it in time for the end of second practice. So going to see what he can do throughout the day with the limited practice that he has so far. Chiacchetti at 24, so he's already higher than he was yesterday with a 28.0.
Indeed. Now, as they come down across the start-finish line, flashing past us here, the 248, putting another time in himself. We're seeing whether or not we can get some improvement in the last 12 minutes now, so about halfway through this qualifying session. And not seeing a whole lot of green up at the top of the field, but the middle of the pack definitely shuffling around still. Therese Lelou, with her latest lap, has put her into 13th overall, kind of sandwiched between those two 991s. She's racing in the Pro-Am category, and it looks like she is actually 6th position with that lap.
Looking up and down pit road right now, Jared Thomas still sitting on pit road. He's standing on his time of a 23.9. Well, Efren Castro, though, running green these past couple of sectors, so he's on a flyer right now. There's Paul Bocuse, if you're watching our live stream, and, he's in the pits right now. So, Bocuse, the rookie in 992, defending Cayman champion, looking pretty stout here early on, but really, we've been talking about Bocuse, we're talking about Freiberg, because Freiberg is a defending 991 champion as well. So 2 defending champions under the MDK banner this weekend. Is Chiacchetti a little slow coming off of turn number 5?
Yeah, I didn't catch what caused that. Bocuse, I wonder if he'll try and get back out for at least one more stint to improve his 124.8 or 124.7, excuse me, He's about 3/4 of a second off of the quickest time, which still belongs to Thomas, who we have not seen back out, I think, since the beginning. I have to double check to see if they've sent him on track once again lately. But we see the 279 also go by us. You know, we keep talking about the liveries. That 279 actually has the family tartan on the front of that car, which I think is a pretty cool touch to incorporate into your paint scheme.
Lalou heading back out for another flyer as well. And let's give a hand to the 261 of Peter Atwater as Jake Peterson comes on. That's a neat story as well. Peterson, this is his first weekend with us here in Porsche Sprint Challenge. He just signed a deal to run multiple series with Kelly Moss. And also, Kayvon Burlow will be his co-driver for some of the endurance series that he's racing.
Ooh, Jody Miller just jumped up from somewhere around 15th to 8th position overall, and that actually gets him into 4th within the Masters.
And Efren Castro making his way up to second place, 24.6. But can he touch on the time of Thomas? He's backing off just a little bit, cooling off those tires, getting ready for one final run. 8:50 left to go in this session. It's still Thomas, Castro, and Freiberg. Your top three in the Pro-Am class. In the Masters class in the 992s, it's Scott Blend, Joel Johnson, and Rob Walker. So it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 in order overall. I think I'll go back to 12th overall for Charlie Peter. He's got just a fast time of a 26.4 in 991. Niels Meissner, 16th overall, second in the Pro-Am class. There's Francisco de Jesus sitting in the pit road talking to the crew. Tony Melito, third fastest in the 991 class for Fall Line Motorsports in the 127. He sets a fast time for him of a 1:26.9.
Yeah, whoever was chatting with the 121 there was certainly doing quite a bit of wide gesturing there, so I don't know what the discussion was.
That's never good when you see the wide gesturing.
Yes, something dramatic being relayed over to him. But
the top racing crew doing a great job with those two cars down there. As qualifying still winding down across the line. That's a 210 of Jody Miller. Doesn't set a fast time, but he's still 9th overall. 5th in the Masters class. Here comes Efren Castro back out on the circuit. Going to try and see if he can top the time of Jared Thomas.
This has got to be very nice for Jared, knowing that he's matching times with a Carrera Cup driver here in this qualifying session, really going head-to-head. In fact, more than half a second quicker than him as it sits right now, as we got it on board with Efren in that number 265. Coming up and around out of the dip before you go over turn 4, and then rises all the way up before heavy braking and downhill it goes into Charlotte's Web. And that thankfully has looked like he's got a decent lap going, although I'm not sure if he's just on an out lap or if this is a flyer.
So, just a couple of flyer laps left. Niels Meissner in the pits. Let's see if he goes back out there to try and see if he can improve on the time. Oh, Therese Lalou with a good lap. 26.4 out of the driver for the West Coast. She's really excited to be, of course, she's really excited to be here wherever, but she says that this has got to be one of her favorite tracks on the circuit.
Yeah, she's enjoying it. I mean, the second that I set foot here, she was hyped and bright-eyed to be here. Niels Meissner, second in the 991s, as we mentioned, is in pit lane. Got enough time to jump out there to see if he could take that pole away from Charlie Peter. I'm sure he is glad to have the competition out there, but probably wants to be just a bit closer, if not ahead, before these next 6 minutes are done.
0.2 of a second separate the two drivers in 991, but three drivers in between. You got Lalou, Vitello, and Mark Bowden as well, sitting in between those two 991s.
Haven't seen many changes amongst the top 10 overall in quite some time. They've all pretty solidified themselves. Castro, obviously, the big one there. Freiberg still holding on to that third place. I don't think we've seen her improve lately, but that's a good sign if she set it that early and has been able to rest on her laurels.
As the Kelly Boss crew sends Meissner out for one final attempt to take the pole in the 991 class. Let's see what he can do here as the very brightly multicolored 152 goes out on course.
Yep, Meissner's paint is hard to miss. That is for sure.
Also something to watch out for, too. Tony Melito's 0.2 of a second behind Meissner as well. So your top three teams in 991 are Team Phoenix, Kelly Moss, and Fall Line. So the team that doesn't come out much is actually taking the lead right now with the 991 class.
Very interesting. So we wait to see if we get any changes, trying to watch for any green sectors popping up in case somebody might be on a flyer. Eric Lapp, I think, improved last time by with a personal best of a 27.4. That'll jump him up to 25th overall.
Newcomer Chris Sewell is with a 28.4. Got to talk to his driver coach, who I've actually known since we both were in club racing. So that's pretty cool to see that. It's cool to see the driver coaches you don't normally see out there, because 9 times out of 10, a lot of these driver coaches are pro. They've made their way up through the ranks. I was driving in with my wife this morning. I go to her. I'm like, I realized something. Jan Magnussen was racing when I started doing professional announcing. Now I'm still professional announcing, but I'm in a series where he's coaching young drivers. So it's like, I feel a little old this morning. Just this morning.
Well, so, I mean, speaking of the morning, we're starting to get the sun peeking through the clouds a little bit more. It's been kind of hazy out here today with a lot of cloud cover, keeping it nice and cool, and that's bringing us quick lap times. I wonder if we're seeing the track actually kind of heat up and slick up a little bit, and that's why drivers are having trouble finding much more late in this session.
Yeah, the ambient temperature is 25 degrees Celsius, almost 28 degrees Celsius on the track. So, yeah, I think that we're seeing these track temperatures come up. Also, something to note, the wind, 15 miles an hour from the east. So that's going to affect a couple of cars out there, especially if the wind decides to pick up later on today.
Yeah, so that's 82 Fahrenheit for those that aren't that great with their metric on the track surface itself. 82 is actually pretty ideal, honestly. It's not too hot. It's when you get up into the triple digits that you need to worry about it heating up. Cooler is always better, so if it is warmer than when we started, that could explain the lack in pace late in the session. With only 2 minutes to go, I think unless you've got some cooler tires that maybe can give you a bit of grip, where it's going to be difficult to try and improve, as Castro just returned to the track.
That's going to be interesting to see if he can make a final attempt here. And something I was going to mention, too, our race is at 5:15 for GT3. At that time, it's going to be a hot track. You're going to have Yokohama rubber on there. You're going to have rubber from the NTT IndyCar Series and Indy Next. Oh, and you're also going to have rubber from the Radical Cup here in just a little bit, too. So it's going to be interesting to see how these mechanics get the cars set up for this evening's race.
Well, and also for the drivers, the track's going to be different at that point. I mean, it won't be a completely new track, but you'll find grip in different places. You'll experience different behavior. So being able to adapt to that is going to be important as we get shots of John Manship here in the Kelly Moss car. Down in pit lane, so it looked to me like he's probably done. I don't think he can get out in time from here to set another lap. Yeah, it's a minute 23 left, so I'm not going to see. We're going to see him back out. Niels Meissner not able to improve on his position. Yeah, Jake Peterson actually jump over him, so he was not able to improve on his 126.6. So Charlie Peter, barring any fast lap from Melito, looks like he's our provisional 991 pole sitter, and Jared Thomas setting the lap early on. That may hold, but Efren Castro has yet to pass by. He's got 54 seconds left. Let's see what he does. If he can cross the line early, I think he might be able to, but we're going to keep an eye on Starfish. There he goes. So here comes Efren Castro down the start-finish through turn 1 to see if he can set a fast lap here to beat Jared Thomas and move to the other side of the front row. Scott Blend also setting an early fast lap of the 245 with a 25.5 as we're watching Castro come up through turn number 4. Sets up drivers right hard on the brakes around the 300 marker. Shifts down a couple of shifts, goes left through Charlotte's Web.
Eyes on Castro as he comes out of turn number 5, sets himself up towards the museum turn. Joe, this is going to be interesting to see what he can do. We're going to take a look at his first sector one time shortly. It is not green, so this is not the good start of the lap that he wants. 3 seconds left to go for checker 1. The checker flag is out here on start finish.
Anybody who crosses from here is done with their session. Checking to see, though, we only have, it looks like, 3 cars out. That's the 265, the 285, and the 202 currently on the circuit. And some of them might actually duck into pit lane like we saw earlier with the Caymans once that checkered flag is out if they don't think they can improve. No point in trying to carry on if you're not setting green sectors, as we watched Jake Peterson, that 285.
Castro's not setting a fast time in Sector 2, but he is going to come down across the line. 24.6 is his best time. Cuts across the line, 25.4, not going to beat it. Jared Thomas is your pole sitter for 992 Pro-Am. Scott Blend, also your pole sitter for 992 Masters. Charlie Peter takes his first race weekend of the season with a 26.4. So this is a case, Joe, where drivers early on were able to set their fast times, and then some decided, hey, I'm going to save my tires. Others decided, let's get out there and get some practice.
Exactly. Like I mentioned at the start of this, that there was a few that lacked time out on the track, as we see on the stream the unofficial results now of that session. Thomas and Castro up at the front with Freiberg and Bocuse. Honestly, I am perhaps the least shocked by those first 2 rows.
Yeah, no, but what's great is seeing Scott Blend. We saw the potential he had at Sebring, and now he's up near the front. He is your fastest in 992 Pro-Am. Well, that does it for Porsche Sprint Challenge for this morning. Going to have Cayman race 1 at 12:35, 35 minutes plus 1 lap. Race 1 for the GT3 cars is 5:15 p.m. with 35 minutes plus 1 lap. For Joe Peak and the entire broadcast crew here at Barber Motorsports Park, I'm Jeremy Scott. Thank you for watching. Make sure you tune in if you're not going to be here at the track on Flow Racing or the Porsche YouTube channel. But if you're going to be here at the track, we can't wait to see you. Coming up next, we'll hand things over to Steve West here at Barber Motorsports Park for the rest of your morning. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in just a little bit.